Hello and welcome to HMG Network, broadcasting live from the Greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan. My name is Freeman Singirankabo, and thank you for joining us for this special coverage edition. Today's program, we are going to discuss on a mass arrest in Rwanda. What happens when you speak up in Kagame's Rwanda? And with me here at the studio today is my colleagues, none other than Claude Gatebuke, who is the Executive Director for the African Great Lakes Action Network. Claude Gatebuke, my brother, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Freeman. Doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing fantastic, man. Thanks for being here today.
All right, thank you. Before we start, Freeman, I just wanted to let the audience know, for those who were looking to follow on Facebook, we are having some issues with the Aglan Facebook page. And we would like for you to help us with inviting everyone out to the YouTube channel and follow on YouTube, because the Facebook Live is, we're having a glitch. We will fix it and we'll put this out on the Facebook platform from later. But for right now, please bear with us and follow on YouTube.
Thank you so much, Claude. So for those of you guys who do not know why we're meeting today, we have such an incredible situation developing in Rwanda, where the government of Rwanda has been literally going. I was going to use the word crazy, but they have been ramping up journalists, politicians, and imprisoning everyone mercilessly. Under the trumped-up charges, different kind of trumped-up charges, and I would like Claude Gatebuke get us started with what's happening, and remind the audience why this is actually becoming a far more dire situation and scary, if I may actually use those words. And we're seeking help. We're seeking help to our global audience to notice what's happening in Rwanda, especially that today, as we speak, President Kagame, to our understanding, is one of the guests, special guests at the G20. And I would like to point out that while this dire situation is taking place in Rwanda, on the other side, in the Western world, the population or the public, it's clueless as to what happens, except that everybody understands or know that Rwanda is just such a darling, the Singapore of Africa. Now, Claude Gatebuke, is this the actual reality on what's going on the ground in Rwanda?
The reality of what's going on in Rwanda is actually that what we have is a facade in Rwanda, where Paul Kagame, who is praised as, you know, a progressive leader, as the leader of the Singapore of Africa, is actually really not only a highly and extremely repressive leader. He is showing it. He's showing it today. It's happening now. The reason we're gathering now is because just this week, another critic was arrested in Rwanda. When we say another, it's not just one. This year alone, there's been dozens of people, over a dozen people, who have been arrested for simply disagreeing with the government of Rwanda or partaking in activities that the Rwandan government disagrees with. Not unlawful activity, things that in a normal society, in a place where a government really operates in the best interest of the people, that the people will be able to partake in those activities. Let me start with this week. A politician named Rashid Hakuzimana was arrested for statements he's made on his YouTube channel and other YouTube channels. Before that, 9 people were arrested this month of October. We're almost at the end of October. This month of October, people were arrested, including a journalist, and a number of ordinary citizens and members of an opposition party in Rwanda. This opposition party in Rwanda is known as Dalfa Umurinzi. And the Dalfa Umurinzi party is actually led by Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza, who is a former presidential candidate who was arrested for running against Kagame in an election where Kagame awarded himself 93% of the vote. And get this, through a party to celebrate the win when he already arrested all his credible opponents. So Victoire Ingabire, the leader of Alpha Umurinzi, a number of her party members of her party were arrested along with journalists and ordinary people for planning to have a conversation on YouTube, on the journalist's YouTube channel. The journalist's name is Freeman. Help me out here.
The journalist's name is called Theonest. Theonest. Sengimana
Yes.
Theonest.
Yes, Theonest Sengimana of Umubavu TV was arrested along with, I believe it was eight other individuals. And Theonest Sengimana was planning to broadcast live an event called Ingabire Day, named after Victoire Ingabire, who is the leader of the Dalfa Umurinzi party. Now, this day is actually to call attention and raise awareness on political prisoners in Rwanda. The list of political prisoners is so long. If we sat here and called out all the political prisoners and prisoners of conscience, we would go on all day. And when I say political prisoners, I don't mean just those who are politicians, those who are in political parties or human rights activists, or even just journalists. Ordinary Rwandans are routinely arrested by the thousands, rounded up to keep Rwanda the Singapore of Africa, to keep the streets clean. Street vendors, that's all politics. Street vendors are picked up. Sometimes they're killed while they're selling on the streets. So all of these things are things that are happening in Rwanda. And so last month, there were 9 people. Earlier this year, some of the most famous outspoken critics of Rwanda were also arrested, including Madame Yvonne Idamange, who was arrested in February, in less than a month after she opened her YouTube channel and started criticizing the government of Rwanda and its policies in along many lines, including the measures taken, for curbing the coronavirus pandemic, which were excessive, the destruction of people's houses, the use of genocide as a tool of repression inside of the country and a tool of blackmail outside of the country. And then in May of this year, Aimable Karasira, a university professor, a famous musician, and also an outspoken critic, was also arrested for statements he made on his YouTube channel. Now, a lot of these critics are arrested and accused of denying genocide. And denying genocide or crimes related to the genocide, the 1994 genocide, the Rwandan genocide, those crimes are sweeping crimes. They're charges that are undefined, and the government uses it as basically an all-sweeping, all-encompassing blackmail and a tool to silence people, to silence individuals, to silence free thinkers, and to arrest whoever they want inside of the country, and also to stop people outside of the country from speaking. So today we want to continue to raise awareness on these individuals. Besides that, there has been cross-border, international gangsterism coming from the Paul Kagame regime, where a leader of the refugees in Mozambique, Mr. Revoca, and I'm forgetting his last name, Freeman, was killed. I believe it was last month. He was gunned down in Maputo, Mozambique. Prior to that, a couple of individuals went missing and returned. But then before that, in the month of May, a former journalist and also an activist, Cassien Hamuhanga, who escaped prison after trumped up charges in Rwanda, who was in exile in Mozambique, went missing and today has not been found. And all of this is happening while the government of Rwanda was working. When it happened, the government of Rwanda was working on a deal to send troops to Mozambique, but the gunning down of Mr. Revoca actually happened after the Rwandan troops. Revoca Kanimangingo was a leader of the refugees in Mozambique, gunned down after these Rwandan troops made it down to Cabo Delgado, where they're supposedly fighting in Islamic terrorists on behalf of France. Then you have, of course, I was talking about Cassien Hamuhanga, who went missing since May, has not been found. And all of this points to the government of Rwanda going out and kidnapping, some of these individuals and killing them outside of the country. This isn't anything new. Last year, the Rwandan government actually kidnapped the Paul Rusesabagina, who is the real life hero of the film Hotel Rwanda. Probably the one thing that most people watching this know about the country of Rwanda is the film Hotel Rwanda. So the real hero of that film was kidnapped from Dubai and taken to Rwanda, put in a sham trial. He has been sentenced to 25 years in prison. Miss Idamange, Yvonne Idamange, that I spoke about not long ago, was just convicted last month for 15 years in prison for statements, for simply speaking on her YouTube channel. But again, the government of Rwanda is paranoid, just as paranoid as Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda. And lastly, before I stop, when I say that this is nothing new, the assassination of individuals who are critics, assassination of non-critics, the massacres of ordinary citizens, repression against ordinary citizens, whether it's because of speech or simply refusing to adhere to the government's repressive policies, or simply refusing to be in a place that is unsafe for them, is nothing new. I will stop with this. It's been 25 years. This month makes 25 years since the Rwandan troops invaded the Congo and destroyed the camps of refugees who were afraid of returning back to Rwanda. Killed hundreds of thousands of them, started a war that to date has killed more than 6 million Congolese people. This is documented in the UN mapping report. The UN mapping report documents crimes of genocide, mass atrocities, rape, massive rape, and all kinds of heinous crimes. And these crimes the recommendations of the mapping report have not been implemented yet. And eventually, justice must be served, not only for these Rwandans inside of the country, but the ones who were killed outside of the country, and the Congolese people and other internationals, the Burundians and others who were killed in these crimes that are being committed by the government of Rwanda, by the Paul Kagame regime in Kigali. Now, turn it back over to you, Freeman.
Thank you, Claude. I'd like us to point out also the fact that while Rwandans spend so much money, I would say, cleaning the image, not just for the politician, but also the country, I would submit to you all to research on your own and see what Rwanda looks like beyond the capital, Kigali. Currently, as we speak, I'd submit to you that Rwanda is just like an open prison. And this is not about bashing the country. It is not about bashing the citizens of Rwanda, but that's in reality what's happening. I'll give you a case in point. There was another gentleman, a YouTuber by the name Shaka Gilbert. Just like Idamange, this young man started speaking openly of what was happening in the country, in particular, asking the president of Rwanda to help him find out what happened to his family. This young man was abducted, and today it is also said that he could even be killed. His wife was taken in, tortured, When I say tortured, she on her own has given testimony of her being tortured, electrified. Imagine a woman being electrified on her body parts, on her private body parts. This is the kind of thing that's taking place in Kagame's Rwanda. The darling of the United States, the darling of France. And all of you who are praising Kagame for such a marvelous, fabulous job that he's done in the country over these last 27 years. And I want to ask each and every one of you, why is it okay for an ordinary citizen to live in fear in a country so loved, in a country so visited, in a country so praised all over the world, where an average citizen cannot just express themselves? It's absolutely not okay. You have people getting killed, murders, unsolved murders, disappearance, tortures, all done under the watch of the government of Rwanda. This is not a one case study, two case studies, multiple case studies. Currently, we're working on various stories to actually translate many stories spoken in Kenya, Rwanda, all over the social medias, testimonies of victims who either have been already killed right now or in prison, and their family members also telling the stories of what's been happening to them. This is not even talking about the politicians who are on house arrest, who cannot speak freely. But the government continues day in and day out to showcase itself as a beautiful government, an exemplary government. And this is one of the things that we would love all of you to research, because oftentimes when we share some information, it often meets a lot of critics that we are genocide deniers. One of the many things that continues to be attributed to us just for speaking out. And I'll submit to you to check these many names that Claude was just mentioning and see what's happening to them. How do you receive a jail sentence for reading a book? This is the kind of things that we used to hear of in the history, especially in the United States. Back in those slavery days, where reading a book was such a crime here in the United States. In 2021, you get a jail sentence for reading a book. This is Rwanda we're talking about. The same Rwanda that's advertised on Arsenal. The same Rwanda that's telling you come and visit our gorillas. Now, Claude, as a human rights activist, why does this matter for people to actually get the actual image of the country as opposed to what's being advertised to them?
Thank you, Freeman. I think, first of all, you talked about people being criminalized for reading a book, right? And comparing it to slavery in America, where Africans were enslaved. It reminds me of the person that actually inspired me into activism. Say that. That's right. That's right. So you bring up Frederick Douglass.
That's right.
An American hero, a hero for all of us Africans, one of our ancestors, one of our proud ancestors.
That's right.
Who did so much to end slavery. In his story, there is a time when the slave master caught the mistress showing him how to read, and he beat the slave master beat the wife, and he said, when you give a nigger an inch, he takes an L. You give him an inch, he takes an L. He used that word, the N word.
That's right.
And so the government of Rwanda is basically doing the same thing that the slave masters were doing, in trying to keep people in ignorance. People, already the education system is terrible in Rwanda, with so many reforms that have failed, so many failed reforms. But now, with people wanting to self-educate, they are they're arresting them. Now, the crazy thing about this is the book that they arrested the almost, the 9 people about is a book about how to make a dictatorship fall. Now, the irony is the government of Rwanda calls itself democratic, and
That's
so democratic and so beloved. Paul Kagame wins the
99%.
elections by 99%. And first of all, who wins an election by 99%? Even if they're running against themselves and they're the only person voting.
That's right.
So that that part is is something else. To me, they're telling on themselves. They are pretty much saying, "Oh yeah, we are dictators." They're admitting to it, because why else would they be afraid of somebody wanting to read about making a dictatorship fall? Speaking of dictatorships, on this channel, we continue to I'll get back to the question, Freeman. We continue to connect the dots across Africa and the oppressed people around the world.
That's right.
The coup that's happened in Sudan shows what happens when the military is the leader of the country, and that's what we have in Rwanda. The Rwanda military runs the country. And in continuation of, I'm going to do a quick plug of these connecting the dots. Tomorrow we have a conversation here on this same channel. You are invited tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. That is for those of you in Central Africa, in the Johannesburg line. That is 8 p.m. In Johannesburg, and it's 6 p.m. in Nigeria. We're going to be connecting the dots with the Congo and Nigeria and the rest of the continent. Now, back to your question. Why does it matter? Why is it important for the dictators to keep the people in ignorance? Because when people do not know, when people are unaware, they generally don't care. And the only thing they care about is the smallest, the little things. If they get a piece of bread or a crumb of bread, it's good enough for them. If they get, a little entertainment here and a little entertainment there, that's good. That's good for the dictatorship, because they're distracted. There's actually there's a writing. It's 10 ways dictators keep themselves in power, or 10 ways dictators keep the population distracted. There is actually a method. This is straight out of that textbook. And for a government to arrest people over reading books, again, I'm glad that you brought back the analogy of slavery, because that book of Frederick Douglass breaks it down. It shows it. Slave masters, people who want to enslave people, they want to control people's minds. This is a mind control. And with the government of Rwanda wanting to control what the Rwandans think, I'll take it back to another book by Carter G. Woodson. It's called The Miseducation of the Negro. In The Miseducation of the Negro, Carter G. Woodson says, when you control a person's thinking, you don't have to make them do anything, because they will do what you want them to do without them actually, without you even asking them to do it. So that's what the government of Rwanda is doing. But again, we want to make sure that the world knows, that the world understands that nobody, especially Western donors, the US, America, the UK, France, Canada, and the Commonwealth countries, and many others, that nobody kids themselves that the support that you're giving to the government of Rwanda is going to support the people. This is you are empowering a repressive government that is killing its own people and wasting taxpayers' money. Speaking of which, Freeman, I want to take it to another level. While we're speaking about donor countries, Rwanda is one of the poorest countries in the world. Rwanda depends on aid. A large percentage of its budget depends on aid. Rwanda doesn't have a lot of natural resources. but we know they steal resources from the Congo. Part of their continued invasion of the Congo is to plunder and steal the resources from Congo. Tell me, how is it that the son of the president of Rwanda is got a mansion in Beverly Hills that costs nearly $7 million from a little country,
Okay,
a
let's
poor
be fair
country?
for a minute.
If you're a donor nation,
Mhm.
if you are a donor nation, ponder this. I want to turn it over to you, Freeman.
Yeah, sorry, Claude. I wanted you to actually tie it all up together. I know
Okay.
that this young man, what kind of job does he do to begin with? Because we also want to be fair. I mean, if he has money, he can buy whatever it is that he wants, right? But in Beverly
Right?
Hills,
I'm
and,
glad. I'm
what
glad
kind
you
of job
asked that
does he do?
question.
What's his job description?
I'm glad you asked that question because, again, this is an unemployed young man, right?
Yeah.
As far as official employment, he doesn't have one. He's on a board of one of Rwanda's boards. I think it's the trading board, or what is it, Rwanda's governance, or anyway, it's one of the boards that he's on. He might get paid for that position, but nobody on any board in a poor country gets paid that much money. Even people on Wall Street's boards, many of them don't get paid that kind of money. So yes, you're right. If he had a business, if he was like officially employed, or maybe even had an official salary, maybe he could afford, a mention like that. But for me, what I'm pointing out here is our money, we the taxpayers in America, in Canada, in the UK, in France, in the European Union, in the Commonwealth, are funding not only the government of Rwanda's repression against its own people and the killing and mass killing of its own people inside of Rwanda, it's also sponsoring Rwanda's invasions and killings and massacres of millions of Congolese people. And it's also sponsoring this waste of our money, our taxpayers, our hard-earned taxpayers' money that we pay. The government of the US takes a portion, gives it to Rwanda. And also, by the way, not only do they give money in the US or other, so thank you. It looks like it's Rwanda Development Board that he is on.
Yes, I was actually looking for it as well, on the RDB, Rwanda Development Board.
Correct.
And he was appointed on May the 18th, this last May 18th, which is incredible. Now, I wonder, how many millions do you get paid for that position? Just so that we're clear, because I mean, if he's been racking if he's earning a paycheck, I don't see any problem with that, Claude. So let's try to be fair for a minute. How many millions do you get paid a month for that kind of job?
Well, why don't we use the Visit Rwanda example? How many millions does Neymar or Messi make, in a month? To start with. So for somebody that's had a job for like 4 or 5 months, even I don't believe their salaries amount to that much, especially after taxes. Now, somebody in Rwanda in a job, in a country whose budget, by the way, is very small. There's no way he makes that kind of money. Now, this type of extravagance is not only within the family, or the plundering of money from the Rwandan people, from the donors. Again, I was talking about the US, the UK, France, the European Union, and others who support the government of Rwanda. Not only is their money being used that way, but also remember, a few years ago, you talked about Rwanda being the Singapore of Africa. We talk about how Rwanda is advertised as one of the least corrupt countries in the world. Well, a few years ago, in the Panama Papers, Kagame's advisor, General Emmanuel Ndahiro, was named in the Panama Papers for having created a company to swindle money out of Rwanda to offshore banks. Remember, the Panama Papers were about the stealing of money and taking it overseas. This is a global scheme. The government of Rwanda, officials in the government of Rwanda, advisors of Paul Kagame, and now his family members are actually taking money out of the country, stealing money out of the country, taking money from poor people, from doing what it was supposed to do for the people, and it's being spent extravagantly on one hand. On the other hand, it's being stored in offshore accounts. This is corruption at the highest level. True, in Rwanda, a policeman may not rob you, may not ask you for money, but high level corruption is big time, and it's happening a lot. On top of that, again, the government of Rwanda depends on aid. The other part of it, not only do donor nations, are donor nations keeping a close eye to this, we have, they get political and diplomatic cover from these countries. I mean, think about it. The US has on multiple occasions blocked reports, starting with the mapping report that I spoke about, from being released. And they only released them because of pressure of various activist groups and the media. There was also the M23 invasion of the Congo in 2012, where a rebellion in less than 3 months had displaced over 1 million people. In 2012, this report named Kagame's advisors General James Kabarebe, General Charles Kayonga, and General Jack Nziza as the sponsors, the financiers, and the ones who were providing military armed men and also logistics to the M23 rebels, basically a total invasion of the Congo by Rwanda. The US and the Obama administration were refusing for these reports to come out so that Rwanda could be held accountable. And guess what happened? Once the reports became public, there was withholding of aid, and the withholding of aid ended this rebellion, a rebellion so powerful it had killed hundreds of thousands of people, it had displaced over 1 million people, had turned many children into child soldiers and many young girls into sexual slaves. That rebellion,
by the way, that continues even today.
Right. But the point I was making is, by withholding aid, it stopped that rebellion. A rebellion that powerful was stopped in that amount of time. So the government of the US, the government of the UK, the donor nations in the European Union, France, by the way, the Netherlands is also a big one. We're talking about people being arrested massively. And the Netherlands are the ones who lead the charge in supporting the judicial system in Rwanda and funding it. So, the Netherlands, which was one of the countries that withheld aid, and countries that are making deals with Rwanda, like Denmark, to process their immigrants and refugees. I mean, a country that kills refugees, its own refugees, is supposed to be processing refugee papers for this other, for a third country. Basically, again, Rwanda plays the agent, the mercenary, and the hired gun for these European countries. But as we continue to shine light on this, we are calling for allies within the population. As our ancestor, the recently departed Nita Evele once said on this very network, HMG network at the National Press Club, she said, we want the people in these countries, in countries that support the repression in our region, the Great Lakes region of Africa. We want the people to be our allies. And that is why we continue to shine a light on it. That's why we continue to have this type of broadcast. Again, your money is being wasted. It's being wasted on one hand. It's also being used to repress and kill people inside and outside of Rwanda. But the government of Paul Kagame, in the next round, Freeman, I would like to take on the Kagame being known as a great Pan-Africanist, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Claude. I just want to point out again, because today, given that we have this the G20 leaders, world leaders, actually meeting in Italy, in Rome right now. To my understanding, Kagame was also invited, even though I have yet to see a single picture of him participating. I did see Tshisekedi, the president of DRC, and I'm pointing out this simply because while he still, Rwanda still enjoys the privilege of meeting, of meeting with these world leaders, especially that Kagame continues to look after the best interest of Western countries, European countries, and so forth. Not that there is anything wrong with it, I want to point it out. However, he's the president of Rwanda. While there is mass atrocities in the country, mass human violations in the country, when politicians, activists, all kinds of people just being killed, literally, Kagame can actually go and have a kumbaya with world leaders, and none of them calls him out for what's happening. They run business as usual. I want to find out what kind of image, what kind of message is being sent out, especially when you have really powerful leaders from the United States, Germany, France. We also have India, Indonesia, Australia, Argentina, Brazil, Canadians. I mean, you have who's who, top 20 lists of those who are attending. And to me, I found that as also a message. The democracy, it is only suitable to the few, or to those who have already reached the levels of the true democracy that we are referring to. Because when you see someone going back to that whole reading, being denied the right to read, and the very chief citizen in that same country meeting some of the most renowned presidents and leaders of the nations who champion every single day on the basis of democracy, I find that to be a slap in the face. How do you sit on the same table with someone who's denying the very right that you are fighting for every single day on behalf of your own citizens? Us as being citizens of the United States, I find that really abhorring. I don't understand it, and it could just be the new politics of today, but I think it's a dirty politics. And again, I'm speaking on my own opinion. But when I see like the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, he's visited Rwanda. I have yet to hear him making any statement or even taking some sort of action as it relates to human violations, and actually take a proactive action beyond the rhetoric. Because as you know, when Claude was pointing out, Rwanda is being helped, uses financial aid from the world, from so many countries all over the world. And it is unconscionable to see all these countries helping Rwanda, yet they just turn a blind eye on some of the atrocities being committed by the same government that they are helping. And we want that to stop, actually. If we can just be blunt and straight out, we want that to stop. Because if we are going to champion democracy all over the world and actually hold people accountable, hold these great leaders accountable, hold politicians accountable, and all those in questions, I think that it should all be on a level playing field for each and every one of them. And I just want to call out some of these great leaders all over the world to actually do what is right by the people and go beyond playing politics. And when we understand also that there are so many things, the complexity of what's happening, it's just enormous. But I dare say that a human life is far above the complexity of politicians, the complexity of everything that they're championing for, especially like right now in Rome. And I want to see some sort of action actually being taken by all of you citizens of the world, those of you who actually cherish and respect a human life and the dignity of each and every one of them, especially that we enjoy the privilege of being free here, of expressing ourselves here, and actually trying to live the American life as it's been called. We would love to see at least the rest of our brothers and sisters all over the world also enjoy the same privileges. This is a human right issue. It's not a privilege. It's not a favor. And I would like to see some changes But I know that these changes won't just come because we are saying it. The people also have to buy in it, and they also have to take action towards all these heinous activities that they are witnessing, and speak up, despite the fact that they may very well find themselves in the more deeper problems. But I think sometimes if we really truly want to get rid of a disease, we have to go straight to the root. We just can't deal with the aftermath, or just the obvious symptoms, but we need to go to the root on it. So Claude, if we can just get back to what you were saying, because I really wanted to plug that in. How is it that a Pan-Africanist, as you call it, today has yet to actually take some actionable plans, actionable steps to really speak on behalf of Africans? And he calls himself a Pan-Africanism. And what is a true definition of a Pan-Africanism, and how does he fit in that picture, and how do we relate to that in the reality that we see on the ground?
Freeman, you said a lot that makes me want to start with the other things, some of the other things you said first. Mm-hmm. You talked about world leaders celebrating Kagame. Mm-hmm. That's one. You talked about Pan-Africanism, and you talked about privilege. Yes. Let's start there. The reason we have privilege is for us to use it to raise the privilege of others.
That's right.
And most people, when they see privilege, and when they think of, well, maybe not most, but many people think, if I share my privilege with others, then I lose my privilege. That is not true. That's mm-hmm. not the case. We are given privilege so that we can, in a raised consciousness, we can raise others' privilege. And so the fact that we have the ability to speak freely, that we have these resources, the networks, but also that each person watching this is likely have a Twitter, a Facebook, an Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and many other tools of communication where you can get this out and let people know, let the world know. I think, it's important that we understand. It's important that we understand that each person we don't just have the privilege, privilege comes with the responsibility. The responsibility is to make sure that others achieve this additional privilege, in order to rise, because a rising tide rises all boats. Now, back to the world leaders you were talking about. So Kagame is walking around with these world leaders, the G20, in the same way that predecessors, from the past, people like Mobutu Sese Seko of the Congo, who robbed the Congo and bankrupted the country, killed one of Africa's greatest Pan-Africanists, Patrice Lumumba, with the help of the CIA and the Belgian government, was just as celebrated. And where is he now? They turned on him. There are many others. There's Hissène Habré of Chad. Where is he now? He's in prison, serving time for the people that he killed and imprisoned and tortured in Chad, while he had the support of France and the US and other Western countries. And then I want to come back to Pan-Africanism in a second, but I want to come back to a conversation we had 2 weeks ago with another great Pan-Africanist, Mr. Rutendo Matinyarare from Zimbabwe, who is leading a campaign to fight against the sanctions on Zimbabwe, which are harming and killing thousands of people in Zimbabwe, impacting thousands and millions of people in Zimbabwe. The reason I bring this up is Mugabe, the former president of Zimbabwe, was demonized by the West. He was made to look like the devil reincarnate. Robert Mugabe totally and absolutely overstayed his time in power. He almost spent 40 years in power. He had his flaws. and his violations of human rights. But Robert Mugabe and Robert Mugabe 10 times could earn a PhD in human rights violations from Kagame. He could earn a PhD in mass atrocities from Kagame. He could earn a PhD for invading neighbors, for destabilizing a whole region from Paul Kagame. In fact, the Zimbabweans were a part of the fight against apartheid South Africa, by the way. Speaking of that, apartheid South Africa leaders were also, in this network of world leaders, hanging out with these world leaders who supposedly support freedom and human rights in these countries. And obviously, by being around somebody like Kagame, by supporting somebody like Kagame, they don't support the people. And that is why we continue to shine a light on these things, to make sure that the people themselves know that we build allies with the people from these countries, these countries, so that they can take a stand on the side of humanity. So let me get to Pan-Africanism. When you say, why is it that a Pan-African does not speak for Africans? The definition of a Pan-African is somebody that has Africa's and African people all over the world. And when I say African people, I mean those of us born on the continent, and those who are born from enslaved Africans generations and hundreds of years back. So on the continent of Africa, in the diaspora, and those who are descendants of Africa. Because again, that's all of us. We all are Africans. And in that, those who look for the best interest of Africans and Africa are Pan-African. And there is no way, absolutely no way, Paul Kagame can be considered a Pan-African. Somebody who has the blood of 6 million sisters and brothers from the continent of Africa and more cannot be considered in Pan-African. In fact, somebody who is a mercenary for the West, somebody whose troops are out there killing Africans in Darfur, they were there in a peacekeeping mission, they killed people there. In Central African Republic, same thing. In Haiti, the same thing. And now in Mozambique and many other places, the Kagame is a mercenary. He is an agent of the West, and he is no Pan-African by any means in any stretch of the imagination. But he's really good at, I'll tell you this. Paul Kagame and the government of Rwanda are very good at PR. They're really good at lying. They're good at lying to the world. Oh, by the way, and their supporters are good at it too. They're excellent liars. And so they would lie to the world and basically have the truth flipped on its head and make Kagame a Pan-Africanist, because every once in a while he'll lash out at his masters, at his Western masters. And a lot of Africans like that. But that's because we have not done enough of this. We have not spoken out enough to actually let the world know, to let the other Africans know. And that's why I'm grateful for conversations like we're having tomorrow. Again, everybody that's watching this, you're invited tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time, which is 6 p.m. Nigeria time, and that is 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 7 p.m., sorry, Rwanda, Kigali time, and Johannesburg time. We look forward to seeing you here because we continue to connect the dots. Our sisters and brothers in Nigeria are organizing Congo Week and including Congolese and Rwandans to talk about the mapping report, to talk about justice in the Great Lakes region, to talk about also the injustices that are happening in Nigeria and how similar they are, the repression inside of. So the government of Nigeria killed protesters last year in masses. The same way the government of Rwanda is arresting a bunch of people for simply reading a book and for simply planning a day to call out and to raise awareness on prisoners, political prisoners. So these things, we must continue to educate our fellow brothers and sisters, our African sisters and brothers, so that they know, so they have the real image of Kagame. And for those who want to trade, who want to do business, Africa must not be for sale. Africa must trade as a partner, as an equal partner, not in a way that exploits them. And what Kagame does, along with people like Museveni in Uganda, the Davies in Chad, and other agents like Blaise Compaoré, who's now on trial, by the way, speaking of dictators on trial and seeing justice for Africans.
Yeah.
They're agents of the West. They are the new sellouts, the new Africans who are selling Africans into slavery. And so it must be known, the world must know, Africa must know, our people must know and understand. Kagame is not Pan-Africanist. He does not look out for the best interest of Africans. And by the way, even those who support him, he's wasting the resources of the citizens of those countries. And that's why we must make citizens of these countries allies in our struggle. I'll turn it over to you, Freeman.
Thank you, Claude. You just broke it down, and I was just reading over the some of the questions and comments that are coming from the from YouTube in particular.
I'm not able to hear you, Freeman.
Oh, my apologies, Claude. My apologies. I was saying that I was viewing some of the comments and questions coming from the YouTube viewers in particular. And what can be done to some of these country donors, especially helping Rwanda when it comes to monetary help, military help, even we can dare say democracy, how to run a country that's transparent, that actually, that's on the same scorecard as the West, so to speak. What can be done to these donor nations, and how do we get them to actually pick up the microscope and see the country on a more detailed studies than they're looking at it right now?
Yep, sorry about that. Having a technical glitch there. We have all kinds of glitches today. The hackers are, I guess they had a little bit of success with our, by the way, for the audience, we are having issues with the Facebook live broadcast. So we'll look for ways to fix it and put this conversation out there. But just so you know, if anybody was looking to follow it on Facebook, please invite them here or send them this link for now. Now, what can people do in these donor nations? People must petition their governments to stop, number one, military support for the government of Rwanda, non-emergency aid, and direct budgetary support. All of that must be stopped. And if any support is go right to the people. Go right to direct, projects. Again, we don't want to be aid dependent. We want to be independent. We want to be, we want Rwandans to determine, and we want the people of the region, and we want Africans to determine their own matters, their own destiny. And so, donor nations must be held to account, especially the government. And one way to do it, like I said, is to petition. There are many ways to petition. I have seen previously, in other campaigns where I give the example of the Darfur genocide, where we were pushing for we were pushing for the recognition but action taken on the Darfur genocide. And one senator said, oh, this is not in my priorities. I've got the budget, I've got immigration, I've got, a bunch of these other countries. And by the way, it's true. Rwanda is on nobody's top list. Rwanda is a very small country in the middle of the continent, no port, nothing, no major resources. It's not in the top priorities. So we must bring it up to the top priority. Now, what this senator said was, oh, this is like number 22 on my priorities list.
No, wait,
And
Claude. I know you just said
this
that Rwanda is not that important. I beg to disagree. We have DRC right next to us, and we are also the
true.
gateway to what's happening. So I think it sort of matter. Otherwise, can you actually explain to me why Kagame is at the G20 meeting when South Africa is on a conference call? How do you explain that to
Well,
me?
is Kagame there? I haven't seen the evidence
Wait, I have,
that
from
he's
what they
actually
say, that
there.
he's invited. I
But
did see
let's say
Tshisekedi,
he
like
is
I
there,
said.
right? Let's say he is there. He is one of their top agents on the continent in terms of just carrying out the missions, being a top mercenary of the West in on the continent. But also there's another thing. If you look at not only what's happening with in terms of trade and resources on the continent of Africa, but you look at what's happening today in the world, the coronavirus pandemic. By the way, it's killed. I believe it was the last time I looked. I think it was 5 million, maybe 6 million people. Kagame himself has been responsible for the death of over 6 million people. Now, when you look at what's happening with coronavirus and the trade wars associated with it, where, for example, if you want to go to a country that requires a vaccine in order to enter, you have to have a certain type. You can't have the ones that are made in China. Like if you go into places like, say, like the European Union or Canada, where they have a requirement for a vaccine, you can only have the ones that are made in the West, right?
That's right.
And so this is a war for the market. And Kagame, one of the things that he has done is been able to present himself as somebody who is not aligned with China, because there is a trade war between China and the West. And it's happening globally, it's happening in the pandemic, it's also happening on the continent of Africa. And Kagame happens to be the one person or one of the few on the continent that they think they can count on in terms of, like keeping China at bay. So he matters in that sense. Now, back to the DRC, where you say that Rwanda matters because of the DRC. Nobody needs to go through Rwanda to actually get into the DRC, because Mobutu gave them the DRC when he was the president. So they could find a Congolese puppet, which I absolutely hope that the Congolese resist any puppets and that they will determine their own affairs. In fact, by the way, I salute the Congolese and their courage and their fight and their resistance to every oppressive system that's ever set foot on the Congolese soil. Starting with colonialism, they resisted, defeated it. Obviously, colonialism returned in a different form, but even Mobutu didn't have full control of the Congo. Then came Kabila. He didn't have full control of the Congo. And, he came with his Rwandan and Ugandan supporters, the Kagames and the Musevenis. They were never able to dominate the Congo. They tried to balkanize the Congo, to cut Congo into pieces. The Congolese people resisted. So shout out to my Congolese sisters and brothers for showing us how to resist oppression. It's still terrible what's happening in the Congo, but there is a lot of hope that the people will eventually win over, because they are taking action. And that's what we also must do. That's why it's important for us to continue to speak up. That's why it's important for every person that has social media, that has a platform, a personal platform, small thing like your social media, is big enough to put out a message.
Claude,
There are people.
let
Let me finish with this example on why it matters what happens, what people do on social media in terms of raising awareness. I heard a testimony from a Rwandan person, Dr. William Adams. I think you've also heard the testimony.
Yes.
He was kidnapped from Gabon, taken to Rwanda, tortured. Many of the people he went with were killed. But guess what happened? While they were being tortured and killed, when they went to use the bathroom, they kept dropping pieces of paper, calling for help. Somebody picked up that piece of paper and actually called for help. That's why it matters. Every voice matters. Every 2 feet matters. And, it's why it's important that Rwandans speak for ourselves, but also that we call the world to support the efforts. They will not know unless we speak up. They will not know unless we actually put the information out there. That's why it matters. That's why calling it out matters. But to your question, he's there because he's one of their top agents, one of their top mercenaries.
Now, speaking of the mercenaries, and I know that it's not exactly the topic, but I just want to throw it in there that when you mention about the pandemic and and Rwanda receives vaccines from the United States, I want to point out, and if my memory serves me correct, I believe it was on August the 19th.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not sure if they receive them from the United States, but please continue. I was just saying that the way right now the policies are made is you have to take a certain type for certain countries. You can't just get any vaccine. And so you can tell that it's also part of the trade wars.
That's right. The reason why I thought that was actually, that was fitting, the Chinese government, I remember on the 19th, I do believe in August, the Chinese ambassador in Rwanda, I think his name is Raoul Hongwei. I hope I pronounced it correctly. He oversaw the donation of 200 vaccine of Sinopharm. The Sinopharm it's a COVID-19 vaccine that's being manufactured in China, and he gave it to Rwanda. And we know that China is one of the countries that's doing business in Africa on such a huge scale. The whole global war when it comes to the economics, taking over the land, finding new puppets to advance the developed countries' agenda in Africa. China is inserting itself also, and Kagame, he knows what time it is, and he can actually he knows how to play the cards right. But going back to the fact that all this is showing how he gets the privilege of coming on the table, dining with the world leaders, what other interests is he actually is he pulling on behalf of Rwanda that we can publicly actually speak of? Because right now I am dumbfounded as to the greatest interests of the actual Rwandan citizen in G20 right now. Aside of being just a guest, what is he doing there as it relates especially to human violations, kidnapping, murders, some of the things that the government is doing? Is it one way to reward what the government is doing, or how do we tie that in? I don't quite understand, to be honest.
Well, it shows you that these developed countries they don't care about human rights in other countries. That's why I use the example of Zimbabwe and the example of Robert Mugabe. What Robert Mugabe did by taking back the lands from the white settler colonialists in Zimbabwe was right, and it was on per agreement in the Lancaster Agreement at independence. They agreed that they would return the lands, or the UK would pay. 2000, they didn't pay. So he said, okay, we'll take them back. Of course, I don't personally agree with the way he did it or distributed the lands, but it was the right thing to do per the agreement. They turned him into a devil for that. But Kagame is still a saint. And what Kagame is doing there is not in the interest of Rwandans. It's not even in the interest of Africans. It's in the interest of Kagame himself and his puppet masters. Again, Kagame, I keep referring to him as a top mercenary because not only is he serving the economic interest of multinational companies, many of which, by the way, if you look at the reports, we have the lists of those companies, many based in, I think the majority are in Canada, and then the next is Australia. And then you have the US and the UK and a bunch of other countries. But believe it or not, even in one of the countries that has, you talked about South Africa being on a conference call. South Africa is one of the countries that has their mining companies also as part of those multinationals that exploit the Congo.
That's
But
right.
for Western countries, Western mining countries, Kagame has been a great asset economically in the way that he helps them plunder the Congo. And I want to use an example. In the UN reports, the expert reports, 2001, 2002, 2003, they describe how the Rwandan troops would go and take the resources. And this isn't like, if you look at what Rwanda was producing in terms of coltan or other minerals that come out of the Congo and what they produce now or what they produced since 1997, there's a major difference. Now, what they would do is so cynical and horrible. They would wait until the people finish mining or collecting, if it was coffee or timber or mining or anything. They would wait until they are done. After they stock everything, they would attack. This is described in the reports. They would attack and then kill the people, take the resources. And these are Rwandan troops. You fast forward to like the year 2009, 2008, 2009, when it was the CNDP in the Congo. One of Kagame's financiers who has fallen out with Kagame now, his name is Tribert Rujugiro Ayabatwa. Tribert Rujugiro Ayabatwa. We have transactions, bank transactions, where he was sending money to the CNDP to fight in the Congo. This was one of Kagame's top allies at the time. And so over the years, this is just to show the evidence and the connection where Kagame has been a good agent, economic agent of the multinationals that are exploiting the region, especially the Congo. Back to your point earlier that Rwanda is a gateway to the resources in the Congo. Uganda is also.
That's right.
Now, again, it goes to my analogy of Kagame is the type of Africans that sold other Africans into slavery because, again, it was being done by corporations supported by governments. So he's serving economic interest of these countries, but also military interest. I keep going back to the peacekeepers, quote unquote, peacekeepers in Darfur, the peacekeepers in the Central African Republic, the peacekeepers in Haiti. And now all of those African countries, by the way, I know Haiti is in the Americas, but Haiti is a black country, the first black republic in the world. 1804. Shout out to all the Haitians. Now, the other part of it, now you add that he sent the Rwanda military into Mozambique now. These again are mercenaries of the West. So he's fighting battles that if you sent American or French troops or other troops, there will be an outrage, an outcry by the citizens of those countries. So Kagame is at the G20 because, again, he's a good servant and he's being personally awarded. This is not an award to Rwandans. This is not awarding Rwanda itself. It's actually cover to show him as such a great, leader worthy of being around these other world leaders versus, somebody who is a human rights abuser, who's arresting people for simply speaking, who is arresting people for calling out his destructive policies, who is kidnapping children off of the streets, taking them to these, they call them safe houses, they're torture chambers, who takes them, some of them are sent off to an island. Again, there's another statistic. A study in January this year showed that our generation, people born in the year 80 or sometime in 79, between 79 and 2007, nearly 600,000 of them disappeared between the year 2005 and 2017. Again, this is a person, this is a president that's committing genocide and getting away with it inside of his own country and in neighboring countries. So again, he's not there because he's a champion of Rwandans. He's there and they're not calling out his human rights abuses because he's such a good servant. But eventually, as we continue to raise awareness, as the world continues to know, because the world must know, As we continue to raise awareness, the world will turn. That's what happens. MLK said, Martin Luther King said, the arch of history is long, but it bends toward justice. And what we are doing here and what we continue to do is to speed up the bend, to make sure that it gets to justice.
Thank you, Claude. I want to get back to the charges, the famous charges, the most popular charges right now in Rwanda. That's very delicately given to every single person who speaks up, including you, Claude, myself, and everyone who dares to speak up. One of the most legendary crimes or charges that's being given, it's a crime of trivializing the genocide. Now, I do not know how it's measured. I want to be frank with the viewers. And we also have causing unrest. For example, speaking up against rapes in the country, as Idamange has done, as Karasida has done, as Victoire Ingabire has done, as Theones, the journalist who's been arrested, has done. That's another one of the popular charges that you actually can easily pick up. And the government so delicately, actually, they can also give you another famous charge of spreading the rumors. Now, it buffers my head oftentimes when I imagine how do you spread the rumors? How does the government actually look in the future that you will be spreading the rumors, and then they book you in a cell while they're building up a case against you? Claude, as a human activist, are there processes by which actually we're supposed to get arrested, charged, and then taken to court under the assumption of innocence, the presumption of innocence? Why is it that Rwanda doesn't follow such guidelines, and yet it enjoys the privileges, it enjoys the scorecard of having one of the most leading law-abiding citizens' books on it?
That's a rhetorical question, right? To me, there are processes. First of all, we have seen the template. The template to success is making sure that the movement is globalized, and the template is building allies, getting allies on the continent, and getting allies all over the world to push against the system. I mean, we have seen, slavery as it was known, where Africans were being enslaved, ended because people took a stand.
That's right.
And shout out to everybody that took a stand at that time. And many other things, the fight against apartheid, it was a global fight. Mm-hmm. I was in Mandela's old house in Soweto years ago, and that house has, you can see how the world was mobilized. There are many places, there are many things, and many much documentation there that shows how the globe was mobilized. So we have a formula. Our brother from Ethiopia, Kayo Bashir, who was here on International Refugee Day, spoke about it. He said we must energize, organize, and take action. And shout out to Kayo, because that's the formula. But we must globalize. I would add, we must globalize this this fight. So raise awareness. On top of raising awareness, we've got to push now to challenge every one of these institutions. There's ways to challenge the corporations. There is corporate responsibility. There are processes for that. There's ways to challenge governments in multiple ways. That must be done in terms of, especially financial, military, and diplomatic support. Mm-hmm. And there are ways to get the citizens to act, which starts with raising awareness. Again, that's why I push everybody. Use your social media to raise awareness. Share these types of conversations. Make sure that the world knows. If you're not speaking it yourself, share those who are, share from those who are actually doing it. But do your part. Do speak with your own 2 feet, with your own voice also, because those who follow you will listen a lot more to your voice than many others. I've noticed a few comments in the YouTube, Freeman, that I think are important to mention. There is something from Egle Kagoma saying Macron won't budge. He won't budge. He is actually glad he found Kagame as his partner in crime. As the French army is becoming increasingly unwanted in most of the Francophone countries in Africa, Macron has found his way. And you know what? Shout out to sisters and brothers, who are fighting against France Afrique, our brothers, our brother Kemi Seba and others who are doing this work. And then there is, let's see, there's a comment from BDB 2020 saying being at the G20 meeting have nothing to do with the resources in Rwanda. G20 is not only involved in economic, but also security allies. I agree. I think we just spoke to that. And also Rwanda doesn't really have a lot of resources to speak of. So you are correct. And another comment from Egle Kagoma saying they are not peacekeepers. They are slowly substituting the unwanted French army in Francophone countries. This is why the Army Chief of Staff was visiting Mali, where French army is wrapping up. Oh, speaking of Mali, at one point, one of Rwanda's most notorious mass murderers, I think, what's his name? I forget his first name, Kazura. He's a General Kazura, was assigned to lead in another one. I'm forgetting his name, the general's name, Nyamvumba, Patrick Nyamvumba. They were assigned to these peacekeeping missions, and Mali was one of them. The one thing that's common in these peacekeeping missions is the abuse of the people, the rape and the killings of people that are supposed to be being protected by these peacekeepers. It's happened in Darfur, it's happened in the Central African Republic, it's happened in Haiti, and I gotta check to see if it hasn't happened in Mali, because I don't have documentation on that, but I'm almost sure that that is the case. Yeah, Jambosco Kazura is the name. Yeah, that's right. And then let me see if there are other. Yeah, there's someone named Krukate James said we want people from donor nations to be in our alliance, not the people from the government, because they are getting bribes from the Kagame crew. And then someone named Wisdom TI said sometimes we have to put the blame on the Western countries who support criminal Paul Kagame, give him money. And there is news that his son, Kyomoro Kagame, that he's purchased. We talked about that $7 million mansion in California. And then there is one from Janti Urgeni saying donor nations are donating, but the money is used to buy mansions in Beverly Hills. They should wonder how does that help Rwandans. This is a big joke. And then see what else we have. The world must know. This is from Odette Mrekatete. The world must know. Thank you guys for saying the truth and inspiring young generations. There is, I believe that's those are all the main comments. There's one from Angelique Mugiraneza saying, how did Chinese become who they are overnight? I think it's one of the best strategies we can think about.
Interesting.
I think, I don't know if it was overnight, but
it wasn't.
Their relevance
since the 80s,
is definitely important to keep
back
up
in the
with.
80s when we were just seeing the sun. I think from the 80s, the Chinese started and they were actually inserting themselves globally until, especially so many of them. From the 80s, they have been building up. I would dare say actually that even from the 70s, from what I have read, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and definitely within 2000, they were taken off. And right now, I think the Chinese are pretty much all over. Now, there is a question or maybe a comment that came from our studio WhatsApp. and they saying, Claude and Freeman, how dare do you guys get on your American television and bash our president? And he said that this is actually crazy. I don't even know why I'm reading this. So he said, how dare...
Please do. I think it's important.
He says, how dare do you get on television network and you bash our president? You're doing a disservice to Rwanda and the Rwandese people. And they are to also put you in jail, just like Idamange that you have been that you have been helping, and Karasida, who's rotting in jail right now. This is someone sending a message from Rwanda. I don't have the name, but I have his phone number in Rwanda. Your response to this one, Claude?
Yeah, before I do that, I think there's another relevant comment here from Nadine Kazuba that kind of responds to that. We have to keep speaking up.
That's right.
Thank you, brothers. Rwandans are being killed, evicted from their homes, homes they own without compensation, being shut down for speaking the truth. All of these things the world must know. So there's the answer, right? We can't sit and be quiet and be silent about when you see violence, and I keep saying this, and you keep silent, you're a complicit to what's happening. Silence is violence. When you see an injustice and you remain quiet, you're inviting violence toward the others, but also towards you, because eventually, the vultures and vampires who spread this kind of violence will eventually get to somebody, to the person that thinks they are totally immune to it. So when you consider yourself immune to an injustice, you actually eventually will experience it. So it's better to fight it while it's happening to somebody else than when it's happening to you, because it's much harder. Now, to this person saying, how dare we get on our American, TV network, television and speak, about and bash the Rwandan president. I keep saying this to all of the supporters of Kagame and his RPF party and, his mass murdering military and those who support the mass murdering of people on the continent. I keep saying this. By the way, I got a text from one of his agents, one of our friends. Some of the people that follow us, the stalkers here, saying, "Hey, please don't bash Rwanda." And I say, no, there's no bashing Rwanda. We're calling out injustices.
That's right.
So there is no limit. As I said, the world must know. And as it's been said, multiple people in the comments have said that the world must know. I think I saw that from Delphine. I saw that from so many people. And you said it, and we say it here all the time. It's our motto. If you don't want us to speak, stop the injustices.
That's right.
If you don't want us to speak, if you don't want us to shine a light on this, tell Kagame, if that is somebody that you speak to or he's your president, tell him and his government and his RPF to stop killing Rwandans, to stop killing Congolese, to stop raping women, to stop abusing children, and you will never hear from us. We'll be talking about other things. We are human rights activists, and as a human rights activist, I look out for humans and human rights and the rights of people and rights of communities and things like that. So it's a duty and a responsibility for every person that knows about an injustice to speak up against it, to do something against it, And so for this person and anybody else that thinks that way, too bad. We'll continue doing it.
I can add this.
Welcome your comment. And let me be the first one to say welcome to you and others who are following who think we should be silent.
That's right.
Welcome all of you.
Claude,
by the way, a lot of times, let me end it on this, Freeman. A lot of times, people who actually want to see human rights abuses in Rwanda are given free speech.
That's right.
You'll see members of the government and supporters of the government calling for the arrest of people. And it happens. But the ones who say, no, leave people alone, are the ones who get in trouble. Those, the ones mentioned, the Karasiras, the Idamanges, the Rashid Hakuzimanas, and many others. Go ahead, Freeman.
Thank you, Claude. I simply wanted to actually solidify to what you were saying, that the world must know. Currently, the way the system is set up in Rwanda, you have like thousands and thousands and thousands of people who actually speak up against all these heinous acts taking place in the country in Kinyarwanda. This is the local language, the local dialect that's spoken in Rwanda. It's just very few outlets that actually speak up in French and English and so on. And one of the things that we're doing right now, we want to actually speak in the language that the world understands, not just Kinyarwanda. We also want you guys to be aware of it so that you won't get to say that you did not know. Because one of the things that has been happening, I don't know if you remember back in '94 when Clinton says we didn't know. But the truth of the matter is they knew. So we want to speak up in the open. And we want to give you guys the responsibility to take action, especially you who are donors, direct donors to Rwanda. And want to make sure that, especially if you are an activist or someone who's actually who's looking after the interests of an average person, do what's right by the people. Because tomorrow it could very well be you in your country. And one of the things that we continue to do every single day, we speak on behalf of everyone, especially some of the resources that we have been given here at the HMG. We do not discriminate our brothers and sisters. If you need a voice, we come for you. We speak for the voiceless. And we absolutely speak up in the open, and we ask, hey, fact check everything that we say. Because we believe that if we are taking the time, the resources, the energy, the time to come forward with the information, at the very least, we want to make sure that it's the information that can be verified. And that's why we say, do your own research as far as what's happening right now in Rwanda and see what's happening. Go beyond visit Rwanda. On these T-shirts, on the arsenal, and a lot of this PR that's being very well done by the government of Rwanda. And let's actually pull the rug and see what's right underneath of it. And I'll submit to you that you will be shocked on what you will find. And that's why I do believe that we have a duty and a responsibility, especially us who are in countries that we so enjoy what Kagame calls freedom of speech and freedom of expression. We truly enjoy that here. Now, Claude, there's another thing I really wanted to touch bases on, and I want to get your reaction. Last year, and even a year before when Trump was a president, we have Black Lives Matters. Can you picture the unrest that we have had, not just in the United States, but also all over the world? Can you imagine if Kagame was the president of the United States? How many people would actually been arrested, either by attempting to topple his government, unrest in the country, complicity to some sort of premeditated genocide? Can you actually see how in Rwanda the so-called freedom of expression is the selected freedom of expression to the RPF members? The RPF is the Front Patriotic Rwanda, the FPR party in Rwanda. So we don't have freedom of expression. We do not have freedom of speech. If Black Lives Matters would have to take place the same way if it's taken place in the United States or all over the world, I could just see thousands and thousands and thousands of people dead. And that's what that's what Rwanda currently is actually utilizing as one of those famous charges that's being given to journalists, activists, human right activists, politicians, everyone who dares to speak up for any causes whatsoever. You're being killed, jailed, you can disappear permanently, even though are called permanent disappearance, as you might as well be dead on it. And Claude, I want to get your reaction on it. How is it that the world stays silent when we talk about the very basic human right, seeking for your right to just dignity, simple, basic dignity? Why is it that it's something that is so expensive, to the extent that the price for that could very well be a life in Rwanda? And what can we do actually to raise that matter in a such way that people like Macron, Biden, the leaders in these free worlds can actually take notice and take action, especially that they champion every single day, on the basis of human rights and being able to just live a free and an exclusive life as a citizen of these great lands?
I wish I knew you were going to ask this question, because I would have asked that the studio load up one of Frederick Douglass's.
We can get them to search for it while you.
What he said: if there is no struggle, there's no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom, yet, 1 second, I just lost it. He says, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. Basically, people who want to consume without actually working for what they're consuming. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, it may be a physical one, and it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. This is to your question about Macron and Biden and all of these world leaders. They are happy with the status quo. What we are doing is challenging the status quo, and we must absolutely continue to challenge the status quo until they no longer can withstand and continue to uphold the system as it is, as it's designed and built. You use the example of Black Lives Matter. People were arrested by the hundreds and thousands, in Black Lives Matter protests over the years. Black Lives Matter started around 2012 with the killing of Trayvon Martin. So over the years, many people have been arrested, shutting down highways and, protesting. But they were not left alone. And that's what we're doing here. That's what we must do. We have to continue to speak up and show that what they're being arrested for, the people that we're talking about in Rwanda right now, are being arrested because they're doing the right thing. And we must stand with the right thing. We must stand on the right side of history, because the perpetrators will not get away with these atrocities forever. Now, the other part you asked is, would there be mass arrests in Rwanda? Let me say this. People were arrested for simply wanting to take a part in a day to raise awareness on political prisoners. I mean, there's no bigger evidence than that. The other is people are being arrested for simply speaking individually on their own YouTube channels. And back in 2010, there was a demonstration planned. You said if a demonstration happened, what would happen to the people? Would people be arrested in masses? Well, we have the evidence. In Rwanda, in 2010, Bernard Ntaganda, the leader of the PS Imberakuri party, planned a protest. You know what happened? People were arrested before, not while they protested. They were arrested before they even protested. He was put in jail and spent 4 years in jail. Idamange, she called for a revolution. Nobody did anything that was a demonstration. I do know, I got to kick a shout out to the young Rwandans who took part in it. And they're so smart. The way that they participated The government was sending like policemen to go look for them, and they were driving past them because they didn't know that they were actually partaking in it.
I saw some of those
So
pictures myself.
yeah, I loved it. I loved it. And you know what? Shout out to you all for doing this.
That's right.
Eventually, there will be a time when people can take a stand in the streets and shut things down for change. However, history has shown that Kagame will arrest people before they even protest. And in this case, they arrested the Damange for it. The other people who took a part in it did not get arrested because they were really smart about how they did it. But if you were visibly demonstrating in Rwanda, not only could you get arrested, you might even get shot. I'll use this example. The government of Rwanda shut down the border with Uganda. And I believe it was last year or maybe the year before.
It's been already
I like to
a
use
year.
this example. Yeah, it was. I think they closed it in 2019, maybe 2018, but I think it was 2019. In any case, one of the most egregious cases was a woman, a pregnant woman, who was shot crossing the border, supposedly crossing the border. And so, you know, people doing things that the government has not cautioned are getting in trouble in Rwanda. They're getting harmed in Rwanda. I mean, people who are not in quote unquote in compliance with coronavirus mandates in Rwanda. You know, they've been arrested and, you know, spent overnight in stadiums and have to pay money to get, you know, released. And it seemed like a scheme to actually raise funds versus actually, you know, keeping, you know, coronavirus under control. So there's so many things, so many ways that you see that a demonstration in Rwanda, like the Black Lives Matter demonstrations that took and continue to take place around the world, cannot be, they would not tolerate them. In fact, you look at a place that's much more tolerant, like Nigeria, that we're going to talk about tomorrow. Invitation to everybody. Just a reminder, tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, which is 7 p.m. Kigali, 7 p.m. Johannesburg, 6 p.m. Kinshasa, 6 p.m. Lagos. We have a conversation here talking about the mapping report, which has Rwanda's involvement in the killing of millions of Congolese, but also we'll talk about the Lekki massacre, but the police in Nigeria killing protesters. So if the Nigerian police, a country that's a lot freer than Rwanda, will kill protesters in Nigeria, what do you think would happen with Kagame? You know, and having seen the evidence of him arresting the people before they even protested. Oh, I see a comment here that from Olive Mrenzi saying they even get arrested if they think, you know, people get arrested if they think you're thinking of protesting.
which is true, actually. It may sound funny to some of those audience, especially in the West or in Europe. But if you look at this gentleman who recently just got arrested, Rashid, he's also one of the politicians who's been really outspeaking. He's been an outspoken critic of what's happening in Rwanda. He just got arrested, was it on the 27th or 28th? That he's been in jail.
Yeah, a few days ago.
Yeah, he also were donated those trumped up charges that we were mentioning earlier, the most famous charges, a genocide denier, causing rumors within the country. I think also...
Tell me that. Now tell me how ridiculous that is. When has it ever become a crime to spread a rumor?
Well, obviously, in Rwanda, you are prohibited to spread rumors, Claude. So be mindful. That's actually a jailable offense in Rwanda. Now, this one you're gonna get a kick out of: obstruction of public services. I may be translating in the wrong way, but I think that's what it is: obstruction of public services. So basically, when you speak against to some of the, let's say, for instance, if the Rwandan government wants to perform some sort of a project or have a project initiated, and if as a citizen you have anything that you want to say against that project being initiated, now they've got a new offense that pretty much categorically put you in injunction or in contempt to obstructing public service. These are the charges that's being given to these people. And the worst part of it, they call you, how do you translate umugome?
Oh, that's a difficult. I can't think of the translation for it right away.
So, well, the implication of the word umugome, when you're being labeled as umugome, they actually have they have to jail you. You can't even get bailed out. You have to literally just go to jail until they can find some sort of charges that can stick.
And I think umugome means is evil, an evil person.
That's right. So that's one of the things that's been given to Yvonne Karasira, even Theonest, Sengimana, the journalist.
Looks like we're getting some comments saying that umugome is a traitor.
A traitor.
But I think traitor is a mugambanyi, you know?
That's right, yeah. A traitor is umugambanyi. Umugome is going to be different. Why did I actually mention that? Currently, the Rwandan Investigative Bureau, they actually arrest you before they charge you. They arrest you, they hold you, and sometimes indefinitely. And that's why I actually openly call Rwanda an open prison. You have so many people with case files who are just rotting in jail. As far as 27 years in jail. How do you explain a country that's enjoying the privileges of getting donation funding from all over the world, especially the injunction that's being, the money that's being injected in the judicial system, in the administration system, in all kinds of various projects aimed at developing the country. Yet the judicial system can hold someone for 27 years without being taken to court. The so-called Advanced Rwandan Investigative Bureau, making up trumped-up charges, donating them to the people. These are all the things taking place today in 2021, and we want you guys to know, we want the world to know. And Claude, they telling us that we...
Freeman, you're talking about we want the world to know, but somebody's challenged us in the comments and said, is this the right statement to use? Or is it the world must react and or act? You know, and
not only you must know, you must react and you must act.
But I think that, you know, in order to act, you must know.
That's right.
And most people just aren't aware. They don't know. And I think we cannot make the assumption that people know. That's why we must let everybody know.
Which is why they don't want us to speak up in these languages, because we have such a saturated broadcast in Kinyarwanda, whereas the rest of the world doesn't really know, and they can care less. Why would you go and translate Kinyarwanda in English as a foreigner? What's the interest? What's the angle you're looking for? But if we take the time to actually bring it to your table in a language that you understand, and by the way, I really would love to see some of you audiences who are multilingual, who are bilingual in different other languages, come and help us out and speak out. Speak out some of these, acts being taken, and some of these the heinous activities being conducted by the Rwandan government, because it is only when we speak up in the languages that they can understand, we can actually dare say, what have you done? We can now actually hold them accountable. Because as Claude just said, if you don't know, if we assume that you know, and then you get to say, I did not know, we will not be able to hold you accountable. We will not be able to hold you responsible, especially if you're one of those people that we can say in contempt.
Yeah, well, Freeman, the other thing is, the reason why, we must start, it starts with speaking so that people know, and people act once they know, People wouldn't care unless they're aware. And
That's
some
right.
people will remain indifferent, but that's on them. We, for me, it's important that, we never worry about who will be offended if we speak the truth. We worry instead about who will be misled, deceived, and destroyed if we don't speak the truth. And as we speak the truth, some people don't want to hear it. Some people don't want to hear it, usually out of the privilege of being disconnected from it. And a lot of times, they will tone police us, tell us to tone it down or talk a certain way and things like that. But bottom line is, put the truth out there, let it bother whoever it's supposed to bother.
That's
If
right.
make it, I was on a panel earlier this week where a professor said an MLK quote that I had never heard. We must comfort the uncomfortable, and we must make uncomfortable the comfortable. And that's how it's gonna be, and that's what we're gonna do.
That's right. Oh, guys, I'm actually really grateful that we have an opportunity to speak out on behalf of our brothers and sisters, especially some of these who are really putting themselves in harm's way to speak for the voiceless. And it is in those lines also that we actually want to put a shout out to those of you activists, especially in Africa, who need some support to reach out some other activists all over the world. We're here to help you guys out as well. Because we really believe that until we start working as a collective in unity, in true unity, not in the bogus unity or the kind of fake unity that sometimes we are encouraged to join, we can actually end some of these, cruel and more savage way of treating, the citizens all over the world. But I want to also send a shout out to the families of these Rwandans who are currently being incarcerated without charges and actually killed without reasons, kidnapped, tortured, all the heinous acts being committed by the Rwandan government in plain sight. When we say they no longer hide it, they literally do it in plain sight. That's how bold these activities have become in the country. And we want the world to know, and we want the world to take action, and we want the world to hold accountable Kagame and his government. Because these are not the kind of, this is not the sort of democracy model that I think we ought to support, that we ought to push forward. Even, I was gonna say, even one of those countries I don't want to say up in the North Korea, those of you knows what country it is, but I think is unconscionable that you all can actually spend so much money to Rwanda, yet you can just take a blind eye to some of these heinous activities taking place. And we know, most of you know what's happening, but as long as it's not it's being outspoken, you can just care less. So Claude, let's figure out a way to wrap it up. Any parting words, Claude?
Thank you so much, Freeman. I really want to thank the audience for following this conversation. Again, as I said at the beginning, for those of you who joined later, we were not able to broadcast over Facebook. We seem to have some kind of issue there. So please do share this link in the meantime until we're able to figure out what the issue is. We have a suspicion, of course, but we'll leave it at that. Now, also tomorrow, please tune in here, 1 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Johannesburg, Kigali time, 6 p.m. Kinshasa, Lagos time. We will be having a conversation hosted by our sisters and brothers from Nigeria. It's a Twitter, it's the, I'm forgetting the word for the Twitter conversations. Anyway, it's going to be hosted on Twitter. So if you have Twitter, you can either follow us on Twitter, you can follow us on Facebook. Hopefully we'll have resolved this issue. But you can also follow us here tomorrow, that conversation. We'll continue connecting the dots. We'll continue making sure that those who are arrested in Rwanda, those who are killed in the Congo, those who are killed in Nigeria, those who are arrested in Nigeria, we connect the dots so that we can continue to build alliance with the people who have Africa's best interest at heart. And if you have Africa's best interest at heart, you're going to have Rwanda's best interest at heart. And today, you know, my heart goes out to everybody who's, you know, been arrested, those who've been killed, the family of Jay Polly, the musician who was killed this summer. And especially Aimable Karasira, who basically has nobody left in his immediate family, and has been arrested for speaking up and talking about his own pain, but also denouncing those who, you know, killed his parents and his siblings, who are the RPF, you know, Kagame's military and Kagame's political party. So I want to thank everybody that's taken a stand, and especially want to let everybody know that is behind bars in Rwanda, but also those around the world, for speaking the truth, for letting the world know, for fighting against injustice, that we will stand with you and you will be vindicated. Eventually, you will be vindicated, and we're not going to back down. The reason why they're arresting people is to stop them from speaking. And guess what we're going to do more of? We are going to do more of speaking, and we're going to let the world know, not only in Rwanda, because a lot of these are confined to Rwanda because it's spoken in Kinyarwanda. We're going to make sure the world knows in every possible language that we can broadcast this in. Thank you. And again, I call on the citizens of countries, donor nations, the US, the UK, France, the Netherlands, the European Union, the Commonwealth, Canada, to take a stand, petition your governments to stop supporting a war criminal, a genocidaire, and a mass murderer in Kagame and his RPF. Take a stand. By the way, before you do that, if you're not able to get started on that, start with your social media. Speak up. Share this conversation so that the world knows, so that your world knows. And speak up. Let the people know what is happening. Call out injustice, because if you call it out before it gets to you, the chances are it won't get to you. But if you let it continue to fester, it's going to come to your door. And so I want to thank everybody, especially the audience that's followed us, for your loyalty and support. Thank you, HMG, for this conversation, and all of our sponsors.
Thank you, my brother Claude, and I want to also just give you all a huge thanks, but also say let's shine the light to every atrocity that's being committed, every massacre, every murder, every kidnapping, all the rapes that's being committed against our brothers and sisters, not just in Africa, but also in Rwanda in particular. And let's call the government out. And let's call some of these government officials out. Let's call for sanctions against these government members, because as long as they can enjoy the privilege of angels while they're committing these, these atrocities, nobody will know what's happening. And last but not least, speak up, ladies and gentlemen. Speak up, brothers and sisters, against all of these heinous activities, all these heinous crimes being committed against you, your family, our community, and the countries. And last but not least, also, I want to actually just again go back to the G20 president, these world leaders, starting with the U.S. President Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, the Turkish President Tayyip, I do believe, Emmanuel Macron. A lot of these countries that are doing business with Rwanda, especially high dollar donors, without forgetting Germany's Angela Merkel, as one of the people who are constantly enjoying such an amazing relationship with Rwanda. We want you guys to take action openly. We want you guys to hold accountable the government leaders. We want you all to actually scrutinize what's happening in the country and call it for what it is, and actually help us get justice to the voiceless communities, to the voiceless families who have yet to get justice. And I also want to tell each and every one of you, take the time and write your own story. It is one of the... Yes, Claude.
Before we wrap this up, we just a word of solidarity for our sisters and brothers in Sudan who are fighting against dictatorship, military dictatorship. They were able to get rid of a genocidaire president, al-Bashir, and now the military has stepped in and is trying to take over. Everybody that's out there protesting and taking action in Sudan and around the world, we stand with you. And again, this platform is open to give you a voice and to echo your voices. So again, shout out to every one of you for what you are doing for the continent of Africa and setting the example.
That's right. That's right. I second motion that as well. And we want you all to just reach out to us. You all know how to get in touch with us. All the famous Claude Gatebuke. Even we have we have a huge networks. We have huge networks of amazing guys and girls who are doing such an amazing service to the public, an amazing service to the voiceless all over the globe, in particular Africa. And so we want you guys to reach out and let's speak. Let's speak up. Let's speak on the on behalf of the voiceless, and let's not stop. Let's not be tired to shine the light towards every evil that you can actually find. And last but not least, be truthful. Be truthful to yourselves. Be truthful to who you are, and apologize to nobody for being who you are. And with that in mind, guys, thank you so much. And until next time, we will be back. This is Freeman with HMG Network. Goodbye for now.